So this is such an interesting question. On one hand, security approach. On the other hand, humanitarian approach. Yes, you are right to an extent that since 1945 there is no use of nuclear weapons, and at the same time there is no major war between the nuclear armed states, and that is very much evident if you look into the Cold War dynamics and even this post-Cold War dynamics. Nevertheless, if we critically look into the recent years, we come to understanding that there are different crises and conflicts across the regions, across the world, which basically pose significant threat to the world. If I mention few case studies, so India-Pakistan 4 days conflict of May 2025, Russia-Ukraine war, and the crisis or conflict in Middle East. So there is a significant risk of a major war or of a use of nuclear weapon. Why I'm saying so? So you have nuclear weapons on one hand, and then you are moving on towards emerging technologies. I mean to say artificial intelligence, lethal autonomous weapons, quantum computing, machine learning, space-based technologies, cyber-based technologies, hypersonic missiles. So all these emerging technologies in link with offensive doctrinal postures and pursuance of the political objectives, different political objectives by different states across the regions, and using these technologies and employing these offensive doctrinal postures under nuclear overhang. So what we are up to, for sure, deterrence is under erosion, and I fear that there can be humanitarian cost, significant humanitarian cost in times to come. So there is a need to mitigate this threat. There is need to tame down these offensive doctrinal postures. There is a need to to avoid arms racing in acquiring this new disruptive and emerging technologies. There is a need to move on towards disarmament in line with the NPT and Conference of Disarmament. The world community must come together to mitigate the threat in order to avoid the humanitarian cost vis-a-vis this deterrence logic. If we look into the contemporary patterns, we come to understanding that there are new geopolitical realities. I mean to say, on one hand you have US-China systemic competition, and the pressure induced by that competition is impacting the whole world. I mean to say, across the regions, and at the same time you have conflicts such as Russia-Ukraine conflict, then India-Pakistan conflict, and then conflict in the Middle East. So there is vibrance, significant vibrance, and that vibrance is basically threat to the world. Nevertheless, what a specific state can do, like Pakistan, I mean to say, there is a vicious competition across the world, and particularly if I link it to these new geopolitical realities in shape of offensive technologies, offensive doctrinal postures. So we come to understanding that there is a fear and uncertainty between US and China. China fear US, US fears China, and then there is a fear from Russia, and at the same time India fear from from China, and Pakistan look up to India for its security or insecurity. So there is a vicious competition. Vicious competition is basically pushing the states across the world to acquire offensive technologies and to adopt offensive doctrinal postures. So this is something which is required to be looked in by the world community. In the end, humans are important, be that from any country, be that from any nation, caste, creed, religion. There is no discrimination as such. We all are one. Humans are one. So the world community, the international institutions, the civil society, and the great powers in particular, they should focus on where we are heading up to. In the end, we all are one. And if we all are one, so what we are required to do? We need to come up with a strategy which is for collective betterment. This vicious competition can be very much lethal for the world. And this is the threat which we must understand as a whole. And be that academicians, be that practitioners, be that civil society, be that political leaders, be that diplomats, we all need to come together. All stakeholders needs to come together to end this vicious competition which is driving the states and other actors pathologically. I mean to say, let's come together and fight this poverty. Let's come together and provide this access to education, access to clean drinking water, access to health facilities to the people across the world. Let's come together and fight this climate change. There are so many threats which we humans will be facing in the coming times. COVID-19 was just an example. The world is heading up to a more catastrophic, crisis. So we need to prepare ourselves to counter those threats of coming times. So what is required to be done? All stakeholders, be that states, be that non-state actors, we need to come together. We need to devise strategy. We need to end this vicious competition and move on towards achieving the glory. And that glory is humanity. That glory is human dignity. That glory is human worth. So I think humanitarian approaches should be the focus of the world in contemporary times, not only in contemporary times, but in the times to come. World has stuck. I mean to say, since the signing of NPT, the world is still facing the threat of nuclear catastrophe. There were some efforts for nuclear disarmament, but they remained, unsuccessful. And why it is so? Because there is no consensus among the nuclear weapon states. So on one hand, there is no consensus among the nuclear weapon state. On the other hand, there is division between nuclear weapon state and non-nuclear weapon state. And yes, this deterrence logic has divided the world. Nevertheless, I think that keeping in view recent developments, particularly towards disarmament, that is TPNW and other efforts, I think they are significant. And the world must unite together to mitigate the threat. There are thousands and thousands of nuclear weapons out there in the world, and trust me, out of those thousands, even few are more than enough to destroy this mother planet and to bring catastrophe to humanity. So the world must recognize this threat, and efforts are required to be made by all stakeholders. I mean to say, nuclear weapon states, non-nuclear weapon states, civil society, academicians, practitioners, all stakeholders should join hands to mitigate the threat of these lethal technologies. As I mentioned earlier, that these lethal nuclear weapons are further, if we link that to emerging technologies, so the threat become more and more dangerous. So there need to be collective efforts. So different stakeholders across the world are required to join hands and devise a comprehensive and holistic strategy based on consensual approach. We can use the international institutions for it. We can use the regimes for it. We can use bilateral, multilateral mechanisms for it, whatever. We need to use all the frameworks and all relevant forums to pursue states to move on towards disarmament, and this is what is required. And I think, yes, diplomacy is the hope. Diplomacy is required to be initiated, and it should move on fast pace. The strategic interactions, the negotiations, the mediation, whatever, wherever is required, the world community must unite together. Different stakeholders must unite together to mitigate the threat to the humanity. We all need to take steps and play our parts to make this world a better and safe place for all. And I have belief, yes, we can.